Todd Orr, attacked twice by the same grizzly. On October 1st, 2016, 50-year-old Todd Orr set out alone before sunrise into the Madison Valley in Montana. A trail engineer who had worked these mountains for 25 years. He knew this terrain the way most people know their own street. He was carrying bear spray clipped to his chest and a pistol in a shoulder holster. Every 30 seconds, he called out into the trees, "Hey, bear." Not out of fear, out of habit, out of 25 years of knowing better. 3 miles in, he stepped into a clearing and stopped. A grizzly mother and 2 cubs 80 yards away. She saw him. The cubs ran. She turned and ran too. Todd waited, then continued in the opposite direction. He had taken only a few steps when he heard brush crashing behind him. He turned. She was at 40 yards and closing fast, ears pinned back, low to the ground. He pulled his bear spray and fired directly at her face. She burst through the spray at full speed and hit him. He dropped face down, hands locked behind his neck. She bit his right shoulder and arm, over and over. He held completely still. 15 seconds, then she left. He stood slowly. His shoulder was torn open. His arm was bleeding badly. His pistol had been ripped from the holster during the attack. He assessed, serious but not fatal. The trailhead was 3 miles away. He started walking. As he walked, he kept his injured left arm pressed tight against his body to stop the muscle from tearing further. He could feel warm blood running down his back. He focused only on the next step, then the next. The trail was familiar. He kept moving. 8 minutes later, he heard brush crashing again. He turned. She was back, already 20 feet away. No time for spray. No time for the pistol. She hit him for the second time. She bit through his left forearm. He heard the bone crack. His hand went instantly numb. She bit his shoulders again and again, harder than before. He kept his face pressed into the dirt. He waited. She left. When he finally stood, his left arm was useless. Both arms and shoulders were covered in deep wounds. A 5-inch gash ran above his right ear. He was still 3 miles from his truck. He walked every step. When he reached the trailhead, he sat against his truck. Then he pulled out his phone and filmed himself, covered in blood, voice completely steady. He recorded his own wounds, told people to be careful out there. Then he buckled his own seatbelt with one working hand and drove 17 miles to the hospital. Doctors worked 7 hours, more than 50 wounds, a broken arm, severed tendons, shredded muscle, lacerations across his head. The video was posted the next morning. Within 24 hours, 20 million people had watched it. Wildlife managers closed the area and investigated the attack. They concluded the sow had followed the same ridge Todd had walked, and the 2 paths had crossed by chance a second time. No one blamed the bear. She had been protecting her cubs. That was all. He was back in the mountains 2 months later. Different mountains. Same man. Erin Bolster. 3 charges to save a child. On July 30th, 2011, 25-year-old Erin Bolster was leading 8 riders on a 1-hour trail ride near Glacier National Park in Montana. Her third group of the morning. A loop she had guided dozens of times without incident. Swan Mountain Outfitters operated in Grizzly country. Wranglers were trained specifically for bear encounters. They couldn't use pepper spray on horseback without risking the horses. They couldn't fire guns without causing a stampede. Their only real tool was the horse itself. The group included a California family. Among them, an 8-year-old boy on his very first horse ride. He was placed on Scout, the steady trail horse. His father rode directly behind him. The trail was quiet. The morning was ordinary. Erin was riding Tonk, a 1,800-pound Percheron mix, the largest horse in the outfit. She had only ridden him for 2 months. As they moved along the trail, something crashed through the trees toward them at full speed. A 700-pound grizzly in full pursuit of a deer. The horses panicked instantly. 7 of them wheeled and bolted back toward the barn. Scout bolted sideways into the trees, into the wrong direction, with the boy still on his back. The deer escaped and joined the fleeing horses. The bear kept running, and now it was chasing Scout. The boy's father tried to turn his horse around. His horse would not go. He watched the bear chase his son into the trees. Erin turned Tonk around, not away from the bear, toward it, back into the trees. She pressed her heels in and screamed at the bear. It didn't stop, so she did the only thing left to do. She charged a 700-pound grizzly on horseback. Tonk came within 10 feet of the bear and held his ground. Horses do not do this. Every instinct in a horse says to run. But Tonk stood firm, square, facing the bear because Erin asked him to. The bear hesitated. The bear charged again. Tonk charged back. Then a third time. 3 charges before the bear finally turned and disappeared into the forest. The trees went quiet. Then Erin found the boy. He had fallen off Scout when the horses bolted, landing in the bear grass nearby. He was shaken but not hurt. Erin rode to him, pulled him up onto Tonk, grabbed Scout's reins, and led them both back down the trail toward the group. His father was at the bottom of the trail, shaking. 10 minutes had passed. The boy was fine. Erin was fine. Tonk was fine. The boy's father had watched a grizzly chase his son into the trees and been unable to follow. He never forgot what Erin had done. The story spread nationally within days. Erin and Tonk were invited to appear on The Late Show with David Letterman. Tonk made the trip to New York City in his own climate-controlled van. When the studio audience roared, the horse tried to leave. Erin held him steady, same as always. Erin was so moved by what Tonk had done that she bought him at the end of the season. He had been a leased horse. After July 30th, 2011, he was hers. Abby Wetherell, a 12-year-old and a black bear. On August 15th, 2013, 12-year-old Abby Wetherell was jogging home along a 2-track road near her grandparents' cabin in Kodiak, Michigan. It was evening. She had done this jog many times before. Black bears almost never attack people without provocation. Michigan had thousands of them and fewer than 2 incidents a year. They were considered timid, avoidant, more likely to run than engage. What was about to happen had no clear explanation. She caught movement at the edge of her vision. A black bear, several hundred pounds, just off the road. No time to process it. Instinct took over. She ran toward the houses as fast as she could. It wasn't fast enough. The bear hit her from behind and took her down. It bit and clawed her thighs and back. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. It stepped back. Abby got to her feet, and she ran again. The bear came back. It knocked her down a second time and attacked again. She was 12 years old, alone on a dirt road, being mauled by a bear, and she was thinking clearly enough to know she had to find a way out. She later said her whole body had gone numb. She couldn't feel the bites. She tried to pet the bear, thought maybe if it liked her it would stop. She was 12, alone, and trying everything she could think of. Then she went still, face down, arms flat, not moving, not breathing loud, playing dead. It was the right instinct for a black bear. The bear stood over her. She held perfectly still for what felt like a very long time. It walked away. She lay still until she was sure it was gone. Then she stood up and ran, screaming for help. A neighbor heard her. When the bear came after her one final time, the neighbor's presence scared it off for good. Her father had heard her screaming from a nearby house. He ran out with a rifle, but the bear was already gone. He found his daughter standing in a neighbor's yard, covered in blood, still on her feet. Abby was airlifted to hospital. Over 2 hours of surgery. More than 100 stitches to close the wounds on her thighs and back. Deep gashes, puncture wounds. She would carry the scars for the rest of her life. 3 years later, a bear was killed 2 miles from the attack site. DNA from fur and saliva taken from Abby's clothing the night of the attack was sent to Michigan State University for testing. It was a match. The same bear. After all that time, confirmed. She was back at soccer practice the following Tuesday. Still the same Abby. She said the attack would not change how she lived, that she would keep hunting, keep riding, keep going outside. She was 12 years old and she meant it. Matt Dyer, the polar bear and the dark. In July 2013, 42-year-old Matt Dyer from Maine joined a 7-person Sierra Club expedition to Canada's Torngat Mountains National Park, one of the most remote wilderness areas in North America. Polar bear territory. Deep in it. Polar bears are the only large predator on Earth that actively hunts humans. Grizzlies attack when startled or threatened. Polar bears are different. When one locks onto a person, it is not defending, it is hunting. And they are very good at it. They had barely arrived before the bears appeared. Their guide, Rich Gross, fired flares to keep them at distance. At camp, they set up an electric fence, 3 wires, 5 to 7,000 volts, running off D batteries. Enough, the outfitter said. In theory. That evening, a bear appeared on a ledge above camp and watched them eat dinner. Rich drove it back with another flare. Matt crawled into his tent as it grew dark. He lay awake for a long time before finally falling asleep. He woke at 2:30 a.m. He looked up and saw a shape over his tent. 2 massive, pale legs. He screamed, and the bear crashed straight through the top of the tent onto him. Before he could move, it had him by the head and was running. The bear dragged Matt through the side of the tent and out of the camp, still holding his head in its jaws. He could feel bones cracking in his skull and neck. He could smell its breath, thick, rancid, overwhelming. He thought he was going to die. Then he heard a swoosh and saw a flash. Rich had fired a flare. The bear dropped him and ran. Matt tried to stand, too broken to move. He heard the gravel shift. The bear was coming back. Another flare. Then silence. Then voices. His tentmates reached him and kept him talking. Matt had a fractured skull, cracked vertebrae in his neck, and damage to his vocal cords so severe they would never fully heal. He had been awake for less than a minute. A rescue helicopter arrived before dawn and airlifted him out. The recovery took months. His voice, deeper, rougher, permanently altered, was never the same. But he was alive, and he had not been alone in the dark. The doctors injected his swollen vocal cords multiple times over the following months. The voice that came out was not the voice that went in. Rougher, lower, full of static, permanent. He learned to live in it. He said later it sounded like a radio from a long way off. He said years later that the attack had knocked something loose in him, some old anxiety he had carried for years. Something had changed. He went back to the Torngat Mountains the following year, not to prove something, because it was still one of the most beautiful places he had ever been. Chase Dellwo, the arm down the throat. On October 3, 2015, 26-year-old Chase Dellwo was bow hunting elk with his brother Shane in the Rocky Mountain foothills northwest of Choteau, Montana. Strong wind, rain, and snow had cut visibility to almost nothing. He was pushing elk toward his brother's position when he walked directly up to a sleeping grizzly, coming within 3 feet before he saw it. A 350 to 400-pound male, tucked in against the creek bank. The bear woke instantly. The conditions had made it inevitable. The wind was 30 to 40 miles per hour, blowing directly into Chase's face, carrying his scent away. The rain masked the sound of his approach. The bear had been sleeping in a hollow that was completely invisible from 6 feet away. Neither of them had a chance to prepare. Chase had time to take one step back. The bear knocked him off his feet and bit into his head. Then it sat back, still on top of him, and let out a roar Chase later described as the loudest sound he had ever heard. The bear bit deep into his right leg and threw him into the air. Chase landed and looked up at the grizzly above him. No bear spray, no rifle, nothing to use, except something his grandmother had given him years ago. She had once handed him a magazine article. It said large animals have poor gag reflexes. She had thought it was interesting. He had never forgotten it. He had no other options. When the bear came at him again, he shoved his right arm straight down its throat. The bear gagged, backed off, and walked away into the trees. Chase lay on the ground in the rain for a moment. He stood up, found his bearings, and started moving toward his brother. Shane drove him to the hospital. Doctors found a 5-inch head laceration, deep puncture wounds on his leg, facial cuts, and a swollen eye. Several hundred stitches and staples. He was treated and released. From his hospital bed, Chase asked that the bear not be tracked down or punished. He said the bear had been as startled as he was. Officials agreed, confirming it was a defensive attack. The bear was left alone in its territory. The tip from the magazine article his grandmother had saved circulated worldwide in the days that followed. Wildlife managers said they had never encountered this technique in any official bear safety training. An old woman's passing curiosity had saved her grandson's life. 2 months later, Chase Dellwo was back in the same mountains for rifle season. The arm that went down a grizzly's throat was carrying a rifle through the same hills where it happened. Gene Moe. 1 knife, 1 old man, 1 Kodiak bear. On November 1st, 1999, 68-year-old Gene Moe was deer hunting on Raspberry Island, part of the Kodiak archipelago in Alaska. He had hunted these islands for over 50 years. He knew the terrain. He knew the bears. That year, the salmon run on Raspberry Island had almost completely failed. The berry crop had been poor. Deer had died in large numbers during a brutal winter. The bears were hungry in a way they rarely were. Lodge owners had been warning hunters all season to stay alert. Late in the afternoon, he finally shot a deer. His partner Steve hadn't come when called, so Gene began skinning it out alone. He laid the meat out on plastic and had the heart and liver in his hands when he heard it. A roar, close and sudden. A Kodiak brown bear, 600 pounds, charging out of the brush directly at him. He had 3 steps to his rifle. He did not have 3 steps. He had only what was already in his hand, a buck 110 folding knife with a 3.75-inch blade. The bear hit him and knocked him to the ground. Gene drove the knife into the bear's neck from below. Blood spurted from the wound. The bear pulled back, momentarily stunned. Then it circled. It was not done. Gene had watched enough bears in his life to know they tended to favor their right paw, like people. He watched the bear's right shoulder. He waited. When the paw came, he jerked his head back just in time. The claw split his ear and tore his face. He did not go down. It grabbed his leg, 5 to 10 pounds of flesh from his thigh in a single bite. Gene described it later as if it had happened to someone else. He was on his back 3 separate times that afternoon. Each time he got up before the bear did. He could see blood pumping from the bear's neck. His knife was doing its work. The bear was weakening. Gene was too. He looked into the bear's eyes. He had stabbed it 4 times. He had been knocked down 3 times. He had 1 punch left. He threw it straight into the bear's nose. The bear collapsed. Gene reached his rifle, cleared the flesh of his destroyed arm from the scope with his teeth, and shot it twice in the chest. Then he sat down in the snow beside it. He laid down to die. Then he stood up. He wrapped his shredded arm and leg in plastic bags from his hunting gear and began moving down the mountain toward the beach, not certain exactly where the boat was. It was the hardest thing he had ever done in his life. The light was fading and the forest all looked the same. He was bleeding from his arm, his leg, and his face. At one point the clouds broke for a moment, and he could see a mountain across the water, one he recognized. He locked onto it and kept moving, one landmark between him and the beach. When he reached the beach, he found his partner Tom at the boat. Tom looked at him and went completely still. Gene reached him barely upright, covered in blood, his arm destroyed. He told Tom he was done. Tom did not accept that. He bound Gene's wounds and radioed the Coast Guard. The helicopter arrived within the hour. A month of rehabilitation, 2 skin grafts, 500 stitches. Gene Moe made a full recovery. He went home to Alaska and hung the bear on his living room wall. The knife is mounted beside it. If you enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button for more. Drop your thoughts in the comments below and see you in the next one.